You know those people who say cruel things and then hide behind, "Relax, I'm just being honest?" Yeah, this is the story of how I stopped arguing, stopped defending myself, and let one sentence completely undo my roommate. No yelling, no confrontation, just silence, patience, and his own words echoing back at him. This happened last year when I was sharing an apartment with a guy I'd known since college. We weren't friends, not enemies either. We were what I like to call functional adults of convenience. We paid rent on time. We didn't steal each other's food. We mostly stayed out of each other's way. And honestly, that should have been enough. But the problem wasn't the apartment. It wasn't the chores. It wasn't even money. It was his mouth. He had this very specific talent for saying things that sounded harmless on the surface, but somehow always landed directly on me. Little comments, always framed as jokes. If I worked from home, it was, "Oh wow, must be nice to have an easy job." If I asked him to clean up a mess, it was, "Someone's really sensitive today." If I looked annoyed at all, he'd smirk and say, "Relax, it's not that serious." And the thing is, each comment on its own wasn't worth starting a war over, but together, they formed this constant, low-grade static that made me dread being in my own kitchen. What made it worse was where he did it. He never privately, always in front of people. Friends over for dinner? He'd correct how I cooked. Laundry in the machine? Apparently, I folded wrong. Parking the car? He had thoughts, and every single time it came wrapped in a laugh, like I was supposed to join in. If I said something, if I asked him to stop, he'd grin and say I was overthinking it, that I was too sensitive, that it was just a joke. I tried once, just once, to handle it the mature way. I sat him down, calm, neutral, no accusations. I explained how the comments landed, how they built up, how it made me uncomfortable. He listened, nodded, and then he said, word for word, "I'm just honest. People should be tougher." That sentence stuck with me, not because it hurt, but because it told me everything I needed to know. That was the moment I stopped trying to change him. I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself again. I just got quiet, not sulky, not angry, neutral. And instead of reacting emotionally, I decided to take him at his word. Literally. If honesty was his thing, then I would treat every comment as valuable feedback. If he said, "You're being dramatic," I'd smile and say, "Good to know." And I'd write it down in the Notes app on my phone. If he said, "Relax, it's not a big deal," I'd nod and reply, "Okay, I'll remember that." No sarcasm, no edge, just calm acknowledgement. At first he didn't even notice, which honestly told me how used he was to my reactions. Things really started shifting when other people were around. One night, we had friends over. Casual hangout, nothing fancy. Someone mentioned the dishes, and like clockwork, he joked about how I'm uptight about cleanliness. Old me would have defended myself. New me just smiled and said politely, "You told me honesty is important, so I appreciate you being honest." He laughed, but it wasn't his usual confident laugh. It was confused. Half a second too late, and from that point on, I stopped covering for him entirely. If the landlord asked why the trash was overflowing, I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I said, "Oh, he said it's not a big deal." If a mutual friend asked why the living room was always messy, I answered honestly, "He thinks people should be tougher about that stuff." No insults, no added commentary, just his philosophy, out loud, and that's when something fascinating happened. People didn't get angry at him. They just paused. You know that look? That slight eyebrow raise? That moment of recalibration? Suddenly, his jokes weren't landing. He'd say something and then scramble to add, I mean, unless you don't like that. I'm kidding, obviously. Sorry, that came out wrong. But it was always too late, because now everyone could hear it, not filtered through charm, not softened by my reactions. Just him? And the more I stayed calm, the louder his words sounded. The moment came late one night after everyone had left. He cornered me in the kitchen. And for the first time, he wasn't joking. He asked why I was being so weird, why I was acting passive-aggressive. I told him I wasn't. I said, very evenly, that I was taking his advice seriously, that I was trying not to be sensitive, trying to be tougher, trying to respect his honesty. He didn't yell. He just went quiet. Not annoyed quiet, not defensive quiet. The kind of quiet where something finally clicks. After that, the comments stopped. No apology. No big conversation. But the air changed. A month later, he moved out. And I heard he told someone I was hard to read. Honestly, best compliment I've ever gotten. Some people don't learn when you confront them. They learn when they hear themselves, without cushioning, without reactions, without excuses. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't escalation. It's clarity. If this story made you smile or gave you that quiet sense of justice, hit that like button. Tell us in the comments, what's the most satisfying subtle revenge you've ever witnessed? And if you want more real stories where patience wins and karma does the heavy lifting, subscribe for more. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than shouting.